The Heracles, a transport vessel in the midst of a 6-month voyage to the Damocles military station. A vessel carrying a secret piece of cargo. A deadly piece of cargo. Despite best plans, something has gone wrong. The cargo has been breached. The crew awakened, and the Heracles has gone into lockdown. This is the set of circumstances which awaits you in Organism, the newest C64 release from the team of Trevor Story and Akim Volkers, putting you in the boots, well, I'd assume they'd be boots, of one of the Heracles' surviving crew. Your mission here is straightforward. Waking up to discover the ship in lockdown, and the corridors filled with nothing but silence. You must explore the ship, locate the crew, and put an end to the infestation in order to clear the lockdown. The introduction sequence, first presented as the game loads up, does a wonderful job in setting the tone, and also showing those events which led to the current situation on board the Heracles. With the introduction concluded, you'll take control of your character, now free to explore the Heracles. Exploration will show you the extent of the chaos strewn across the ship, along with an introduction to some very nasty critters. Thankfully, a few shots from your sidearm will quickly dispatch them. Travelling down to lower decks presents you with far more dangerous creatures to tackle, and taking them down requires locating weapon upgrades scattered across the decks. But that is not all you'll need to be finding on your mission. In each deck, there are 3 elements which your radar will lock onto. Firstly, other crew members, some of which may have had a ghastly end. Then you have the discs. These are really picked up for accessing the third item, the terminals. Obviously, terminals are used to fetch data from the ship. Upon reaching one, and providing you have a disc in your inventory, you're taken into a mini-game puzzle sequence to fetch the data. The goal in this sequence is to connect each pair of coloured points, and once successful, you'll download a piece of data from the terminal. Fail on the other hand, and well, you get to start again. In some games, failing this kind of puzzle would actually be fatal. Thankfully, you won't be punished here for that. Just dive in again and take another pass. This little decision is a wonderful addition, as it helps show the puzzles are just a secondary element amongst the wider threats you'll be facing. Whilst your radar will do a good job pointing you towards the 3 crucial items you need in each of the decks, there are other items which it won't point you to. To find them, you'll need to be hunting around through every room that you can access. And those include pass cards, which you'll need to open locked doors on each deck, medikits, unsurprisingly, which replenish your character's health, and those aforementioned weapon upgrades. One of the details I really love with Organism is your character's movement. Normally, you can move about each of the 4 main compass directions, but once you get into combat, holding down the fire button, then moving the joystick around, allows you to strafe whilst continuing the fire in the current direction, allowing you to make a hasty retreat when trouble is ahead. Really, in the early game, this doesn't seem that important, but trust me, once you get deeper into the Heracles, this becomes really handy for getting out of those combat situations where you might be pinned down by multiple attackers. Speaking of decks, moving between them is quite straightforward. You'll locate the entrance to the elevator, and on doing so, you'll be presented with the deck view. Now at this point, you're free to move to any of the decks connected to the present elevator. That obviously means the decks can and are served by multiple elevators, and you'll need to run the gauntlet across some of those decks in order to access different elevator shafts to get to different sections of the ship. Whilst the ship plan is only accessible inside the lift, you do get a copy of it provided with the release. If you've bought the download, you'll get a digital copy of it that you can print or view on a side screen. But if you go for the collector's edition of the release, a physical copy is provided there as well. So let's move away from the core of the game and let's talk about some of the elements. Visually, the choice to use the C64's high resolution modes is once again another great move. With a game like this, keeping enemies to a single solid colour makes them contrast incredibly well against the backgrounds of each room, and with your character presented with a white sprite, it allows quick identification at a glance of what's going on. Now, with the game taking place inside a single starship, the high resolution mode also allows for better colour usage when it comes to distinguishing details for which deck you're currently exploring. This also helps distinguish when you've retrieved data from a terminal, as the room housing the terminal now turns red. Within each of the decks, you really want to do some mapping, as it can be easy to get lost between the myriad of rooms which form each particular section. Now, something that was a bit of a minor pain point for me personally is the realization that one may need to trek between multiple decks in order to find pass cards. As from my playing, some decks just won't have all the items you need in order to open all the doors present. This really felt like a bit of an annoyance to me because on this first section of the ship, everything you need is in the one area. You don't really need to hit the elevators up until you've completely cleared the deck out. So when you do move onto a later deck and do find yourself having to explore multiple decks to find a pass card that you need, it really doesn't prepare you for that in the best of ways. Another frustrating element for me was the moments where I found myself frantically making way for an exit door, but when I actually got there, found myself getting stuck and unable to move. For the most part, the controls in Organism are great. They're responsive, they're easy to pick up and use, you don't really need to worry about a lot of keyboard activity, but these incidents were frequent enough that it was a bit of a pain, especially when it happens as you're trying to dash through a room to avoid being attacked by multiple horrible creatures. Something else I didn't really like is that you'd get into situations where you start getting attacked, and there's a particular enemy that attacks you that immobilizes you for a brief period of time. When this happens, you eventually shake them off, and you can be attacked by another one doing the same thing again. It's frustrating to find yourself in this position where you could be attacked and immobilized continually and suddenly take a massive hit to your energy because you weren't quite ready for what happens. I kind of feel that fighting out of an attack like that should give you a brief moment of respite so you can get a chance to get away. But enough of the sort of niggledy things I found with the game. The absolute masterstroke for me is Soul Cross's soundtrack. The soundscape it creates is minimalist. It's filled with eternal dread, and this complements the tense atmosphere created by exploring the ship. I've got to say that a soundtrack like this is the kind of thing that elevates the SID chip above many of its peers in other 8-bit computers of the time, as the capabilities for synthesis just far outweigh what those other chips can do. Seriously. For me though, Organism is just another sign of how fresh things are with our C64 scene in 2018. A game that creates a feeling of tension, of being on the edge of something horrifying. It's a feeling I don't think we've really seen in the modern scene up to this point, and honestly, it's very, very welcome. Now, not everyone is after a slower paced game, or a game about tension. one that's heavily about exploration. But if you are, it is certainly positively well worth your time checking out. As with many recent releases, this one is available through Psytronik and is published on disc, on tape, and also as a digital download. If you're interested in checking the game out, links for all of those are going to be in the video description. And just to wrap up, personally, I love that we're getting these kind of experiences on our platforms like the C64. It sort of shows that these experiences, which offer more than just arcade thrills and spills, as welcome as those are, really do have a place, and it shows that independent developers working on classic microcomputers can deliver games which are just as much fun to play as those coming from developers working on more modern platforms. And with that, I'm just going to leave it here. If you have had a chance to check Organism out, do let me know what you think. If you enjoyed it, if you haven't, well, let's have a bit of a discussion. If you haven't checked it out, please do check it out. Let me know what you think. It's always great to see developers putting such well-crafted efforts onto machines like the C64. And of course, as always, if you haven't already done so, please do consider subscribing. It really helps, and you can just make sure to click the bell, then you'll be notified when new episodes come out. And more importantly, leaving a thumbs up does genuinely help the videos spread reach. And with that, as always, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.